So I think we should be all set here.
So today we're going to go through the process of highway design and some of the associated careers that can be developed from them. We're going to start following our little roadway diagram there. We're going to start with horizontal alignment, and we're going to discuss the concept of super elevation. We're then going to go into vertical alignment, safety, and then if there's some time at the end, we have an activity.
So to start, my name is Michael Zierhofer. I'm from Maryland, actually. Grew up in Arnold, just outside of Annapolis, where I went to Broadneck High School over in Anne Arundel County. I graduated Clemson University in 2017, and I'm now a highway engineer, which I have been for the past 3 years now.
My name is Justin Sotil. I'm from Indiana, Pennsylvania, about an hour outside of Pittsburgh. I went to the University of Maryland and graduated in 2016, and I've been a highway engineer with RK&K for about 4 years now.
So we'll talk through the overall concept of highway design to start. So it's the application of principles and standards for building highways, roadways, sidewalks. It'll include looking at horizontal design, which is looking at how the road's going side to side, vertical design going up and down hills. We then have to come up with cost estimates, and then we actually have to go ahead and build the road itself, and the entire time taking into account utilities like overhead electric lines, underground water lines, and that sort of thing. It sounds fairly complicated, but it's a lot of concepts that you've probably seen and not really thought about too much. So we've thought of this way to show that. So it seems a little goofy, but there's actually a ton of concepts within Mario Kart that you'll see relate to everyday roads and transportation and driving. So we're going to go through some of the issues that might pop up that we do have to address as part of our jobs.
So the first aspect of our job is horizontal alignment. This is if you're taking a bird's eye view of a project where you want to put your curves, where you want to put your tangents, basically how you want to get yourself from point A to point B. We're going to see that Mario's going to try to make a turn, and he's unable to do so, and he slides into the guardrail. So we're going to look through a couple problems and solutions about why that might be the case.
So to start, maybe the driver is going too fast. He's coming into the turn too fast, can't get going sideways enough, go off the side of the road. That could also be because the curve is too small, trying to turn too tightly. If the curve was a little longer, maybe you could make a turn at that speed, or the roadway is too flat. You're trying to turn, but your wheels want to actually skid out sideways, which is never safe. So some solutions we might have. You could look to reduce the speed limit. However, as drivers get used to driving on certain roads, they don't always like to comply by whatever signs are up. They're used to, if a road is 30 miles an hour, they're going to keep driving 30 miles an hour, even if it's not safe. You could try to increase the size of the turn. However, you might start, once you start going off the roadway, especially in the city, there's a lot of things really close nearby that you can't touch. These could be environmental areas like ponds and forests, historical sites, properties, other obstacles like light poles, traffic poles, and the like. Or we talked about with the curve of the roadway, you can super elevate or bank the roadway, which allows you to continue at speed. And as the road turns, you can take that turn faster. You can see in the little picture there, the cars that are on that curve, you can drive that curve faster because the road is banked into you.
So what are some of the careers that can be associated with this part of the design process? We're going to call them our problem solvers today. So when we want to determine a proper roadway speed, that's when we hand it over to our traffic engineers. It might make sense at first to lower a road speed limit from 30 to 25 miles per hour, but when traffic runs an analysis, you can find out that that means there's going to be too many cars on the road at a given time and traffic starts to back up. If you wanted to try to take the road and make the curve bigger or wider, you want to try to identify potential obstacles with that. So surveyors could tell you where somebody's property begins, where utilities are located. Biologists will look for and tell you if there's endangered species. And archaeologists can tell you if you're passing through a historic site if you decide to try to leave the current roadway. So super elevation is usually the way we try to go with this. As Mike said, it's the banking of the roadway. And as roadway design engineers, what we do is we take the road that we have, and we have a curve that has a certain radius, and we know what the design speed is going to be, and we have tables and charts that tell us what % you have to bank the road at and able to travel safely.
So you'll notice even in this one small example where you're changing one minor thing about a roadway, all of these people have to work together in order to come up with a good end product. The traffic engineers have to tell us a good speed. We have to design the speed for that roadway. We have to make sure once the road shifts that it's okay we're shifting it. So we have to talk to the surveyors and archaeologists and the like. And then when we actually do go ahead and build it, you have to be in constant communication with the construction people that are building the roadway itself to make sure it matches what we had envisioned. So in just one small job, you have all these people that have to communicate together in order to put together a good end product. Speaking of end product, this is what a good end product looks like in terms of super. So you'll notice you can drive into this turn really fast because the road is banking you from side to side. Even on these smaller curves, the super elevation might be gradual to help you go at speed. You'll even notice this if you're on highway. If you look out the window, you can still see if you look out that the road is kind of banked. And that's just to help you drive faster across those curves in a safe manner.
So next we're going to look at vertical alignment. This is if you look at a roadway from the side. It's what we call our roadway profiles. And we're going to follow Mario along the same track right there. And as he approaches a segment of the track, we're going to see if there's a potential. So Mario's about to go over this hill, but the issue is that he has no idea what lays at the bottom. In Mario's case, that could be bananas, green shells, or fake item boxes. But for us drivers, that could be pedestrians, animals, or debris left in the roadway. So those are some of the problems that we discussed. And then some of the solutions would be what we call proper profile design. So we use something called stopping sight distance. You know how fast somebody should be driving and how far they have until a potential obstacle. So we know how long it's going to take them to react and then physically stop their car.
So when we had the earlier example where we talked about how quickly your car would come to a stop if you slammed on the brakes, and we said 250 feet, we have to make sure that with our profile design that you can see the obstacle that would be over 250 feet away, so that you can react and hit your brakes if there is an obstacle in the way, so you can stop before that 250 feet. And making sure you have that line of vision is part of what we do as a proper profile design.
So some of the problem solvers for this area would be traffic engineers like Mike and I. We will get data from safety departments about what was the cause of some certain vehicle crashes, and then we'll take that information to be able to design visually safe roadways to make sure, all right, if you're going over a hill, you can see all parts of the roadway in time for you to decide to stop the car. And in Mario's case, it might just be easier to pick up a bullet bill and knock stuff out of the way.
So then, for him in this case, there's no obstacles. You can see if there was something in the way, you would never know coming out to it, which would make that roadway there unsafe. Speaking of safety, as Mario's driving off, you see there's a very steep drop off and there's nothing protecting you. The guardrail there is spaced improperly to keep the drivers on the roadway. So it's vital for us to be able to to make sure that people traveling the roadway stay in their lane, and if they don't, you have to anticipate the worst case scenario to make sure nothing bad can happen.
So like Mike was saying, some of the obstacles in that case was, a sheer cliff, but for something that we could see on everyday roads, that could be a tree, a light pole, and even opposing traffic. So we normally solve that with traffic barrier. There's two major types. There's metal and there's concrete, and they keep vehicles in the roadway, and you decide which one you want to use based on your situation.
So looking at some of the people that might be involved in fixing these issues would be utility relocation. Maybe it's not practical. Maybe there's not enough space to put in guardrail. So electricians or telephone company employees might have to come out and move the obstacles so that drivers aren't running into these issues. Further down the line, we have to have people that would go out and inspect guardrail to make sure it's safe. So you might have people out in the field and construction crews going out and checking the guardrail to make sure if a car did hit it, that the people inside the car would be safe and kept in the roadway. What we also might be able to do is design improvements ourselves. If we can keep the road away from those obstacles to where you're not going to be impacted by these hazards, then we can avoid the issue altogether. So here, looking at more properly spaced guard, Mario comes around the tree. He could have hit that tree, but he's protected again. As he goes around the curve again, he could have gone off the slope, and he's protected again. By having this traffic barrier in the right place, you can keep drivers from running into more hazards. And even again, in that one instance, you can have all these different people that would come together to reach that solution.
So kind of just before we start the activity, to quickly wrap up, there's a lot that goes into roadway design. Even though we are roadway design engineers, we're only one small piece of the puzzle. And it takes information coming from all of these different disciplines, both before and after our job is done, to make sure that the entire roadway can be designed quickly and safely.
So just as an example, let's say in that first curve, the speed limit on the road was 30 miles per hour, and the curve itself was 1,000 feet in radius. If we go to our chart here, you can see that at 30 miles an hour with a 1,000 foot radius, we would have to put in a slope that is greater than 3.4% to reach 1,000. So we'd have to put in 3.6% slope in the roadway to make sure that with a 30 miles an hour speed limit, you can go along that curve safely and at speed.
And you can see that visual image in the car over there about how he's going around the curve at a certain speed, and centrifugal force is going to push him outside, but gravity is going to pull him down. And that's what allows cars to be able to maintain their speed through those sharp turns and stay safely in the roadway.
So kind of a little conclusion here. There's tons of career opportunities within transportation, even from design to putting out the actual product, analyzing what's going on with traffic and existing roadways. And the concepts aren't as complicated as they seem. I'm sure people, you've seen guardrail and barrier protecting roads. You've seen construction crews working on roadways. You've seen how roads might be slightly banked to help drivers. So although it seems complicated at first when you label it as super elevation, it's things that you've inherently seen. And there's always road work going on. It can get annoying when you run into construction, you have to slow down, but you'll see that there's always looking to improve the roadways. As more people are driving, more people are shipping, people are buying things off Amazon, the roads have to be maintained and safe in order for people and things to get from point A to point B. So there's always going to be a need for these roads to be improved and taken care of. The biggest thing, since there are so many careers and there are so many fields, the biggest thing is communication and being able to tie everything together through all of these different roles. You have people from really different backgrounds, really different knowledge bases all coming together, and somebody that the guy in construction, he's going to know a lot more about that piece than the engineer might. So he has to be able to tell each other what the best design would be, so you can put out the best product you can. Like he says, all the puzzle pieces have to fit together for a good design and a good job done. So I guess if anybody has any questions and you wanted to share it in the chat, we'd be happy to take care of some of those. Let's see, I will. Yeah, I know there's probably a lot of information, but it's a lot of concepts that you might not think about every day, but it's stuff that everybody ends up using. So who determines road speeds? That would be traffic engineers might look at a road, and based on how fast people need to get from point A to point B, they can see how many cars can fit through a certain area at a certain time, and then come up with that road speed.
A lot of the times what happens is we'll be designing improvements to a road that already exists. And those roads will have a prevailing speed. They already have their speed limit signs on them. So we'll communicate with the Maryland State Highway Administration, and they'll tell us, that road was designed at speed limit +5. So that provides a little bit of safety buffer. So once we already have that information, we know what our limits are, and then we can look at those charts that we showed you before to design the maximum curve allowable.
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So, many times if there's an accident, especially if it involves fatalities, they do like a recreation of the accident. So does your department play any role in that, or do you ever receive feedback from the police or the authorities around if there were contributing factors to those accidents?
So certainly, traffic engineers will handle it's, and at least for what we do, we're a little bit separated between the roadway design and the traffic engineers. The traffic engineers, we get a lot of that information and see this was a fatal accident where a car was rear-ended because they didn't have enough time to slow down. Using that information, we can say, okay, we need to either slow down the speed or provide more reaction speed for the drivers. Um, so it does all come full circle. Once we do get that, the traffic engineer will get the reports of we had this many accidents that occurred in this method, and then they can come up with this is going to be the best way to solve that. Once they have their best way to solve that, they can tell us, okay, here's what we need you to do in order to make this road as safe as possible by what we analyzed.
It really depends on the project. I know I've had some where we'll receive a simple diagram that shows where an accident occurred and just a brief description of it. Um, a lot of times there are accidents that don't get reported to the police, and we'll find out about those if we go out in the field and study ourselves. You'll go out and you'll see a sharp turn where the guardrail is heavily damaged. So you know that cars have obviously strayed from the roadway and hit it, and that's a point that we want to try to improve. And James, your question about the speed humps, those are going to be based on how fast they want you to go on that specific roadway. So if they only want you going 5 miles per hour in a parking lot, they can build it a lot higher than if, there's a road where they maybe want you only going 20.
Yeah, and just to add on about the crashes, so if it's a state highway, like basically one of those Maryland routes, State Highway Administration has a division called the Traffic Development Support Division, and they have a crash analysis safety team within the division. And yeah, they basically get all those police reports, they analyze them looking at, was it daytime, was it nighttime, was the roadway lit, was it not, was it wet conditions, whatever. Was the driver impaired? It could be the roadway itself and the features that we would design or install or maintain as engineers and construction staff, or it could be the driver's fault, that kind of thing. So yeah, those reports go into a whole bunch of studies and definitely, lead into those design elements such as setting those speed limits as well as the curvature of the road and so forth. The other aspect to speed limits is advisory speeds. As you enter a highway, there'll be a ramp advisory speed and so forth. And there's other studies that are done to determine those speeds as well.
Sure. And to kind of piggyback off what you were saying, there are some times where it is the driver's fault and the design could be a just fine design, but because of a driver mistake, you could have an accident. Even with that, with what we were talking about with the safety of barriers, we still have to make sure that even if it's not the fault of the roadway, we're still trying to keep everybody as safe as possible so that, nobody should ever drive off a cliff. That's easy to say. But just in case, we have to make sure, worst case scenario, that nobody does and the road is still as safe as possible, even if it's not the fault of the roadway itself.
No, thank you for that. Still looking through the chat, see if there's any questions. I'll ask one more question and see if anyone else has any more questions in the chat. But there have been times where various government agencies, you can, if you want to request a traffic light or request a traffic review, that's up, there's some instances where there's not like a left turn arrow. And, I could be sitting at a light for seemingly forever. And I would go online and request a light or a turn arrow be put in there. Is that something that you play a role in, or is that a traffic engineer, or do you know much about that process?
That's definitely more of our traffic engineer department. They'll do something, I believe it's called a need analysis. So they'll get requests that, it seems like traffic backs up way too far at a particular light, and they'll go out and they'll perform traffic counts at different times of the day and, witness themselves what's going on. And obviously, if you have a situation where cars waiting at a red light back up into another intersection, that's a major safety concern. And that would be something they look at to try to improve. And, some other times they determine, the benefit analysis isn't there to make another adjustment. So that's definitely more of our traffic department, but it does all tie into what we work on.
Right, sure. Once they do determine that, okay, there is that need for that new turn lane, maybe the turn lane doesn't fit on the existing road. Maybe there's only 2 lanes, there needs to be 3. Once it's known that, okay, we do need this extra lane, if we have this extra lane, it's going to be worth it to put that in, then we can step in and say, okay, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to take the road and turn it that way. We're going to need this much pavement off the roadway. We're going to move this sidewalk. It's going to cost this amount of money. We're going to be in contact with this crew to go ahead and do that. Be careful of this utility pole here. So again, it starts with the traffic engineer and then kind of will branch out from there as far as what our role would be.
Yeah, and just a plug for the other session, the rules of the road session that Adam and Puskar are running. They actually talk about, one of their slides is on signal warrant analysis. So they actually go over the process based off of the federal guidelines and the state adopted guidelines for determining if a signal is warranted. Because a lot of citizens will complain and say, we need a signal, because they think that's the solution, but they don't realize that signals can actually be unsafe in some conditions, because if we're trying to, increase progression and move people through, when you introduce vehicles stopping, you have to pay more attention. You have to be able to, be ready for that stopped vehicle, for that changing of the cycle. So in terms of other things, like if individuals have complaints about certain phasing, turning movements, traffic congestion, all the public agencies have customer email addresses or phone numbers where you can call, and they keep track of that. And that's, one of a lot of people, that's their full-time job, is really just responding to consumer complaints and questions. So definitely reach out to the local transportation, organization.
Yeah, the one turn I had in mind is actually right on the corner of a golf course. I always assumed there was a safety issue with golf carts crossing back and forth. But thanks for providing that background.
Sure.
Yep, of course.
Do we have any other questions in the chat, or Michael and Kevin? I don't know if there's more that you want to share or go on with in your presentation.
That was the end of our presentation.
I think that just about does it.
So I guess one question I would have is, is there any advice you could give to some of the young folks who may be listening, as far as pursuing their passion, or about getting involvement, or where they could start if they want to learn more, or just, any general career advice you could give them?
Yeah, you want to go first?
Sure. I would say that, there's no need to know exactly what you want to do as you're beginning your education towards in our case, engineering or any transportation field. I started at Maryland as engineering undecided, and I took multiple different classes to figure out which disciplines I would like the best. And for me, that was civil. And you'll learn as you go along based on which classes you liked the best, what your interests are, and you're going to be able to hone those as you go along. So don't feel like you need to have all the information or everything planned out right now. Feel free to take it in and build around your interests that you find as you go along.
Yeah, I can say I certainly didn't narrow myself only into transportation when I didn't even know I was going to go into that once I graduated school. I knew I liked math and science. I knew I liked playing with like Tinker toys when I was a kid. I knew I liked building stuff and putting stuff together. Once I realized that I can combine all of those in engineering and highway design, it worked out well for me. But there's still plenty of options even outside of that. There's still plenty of people that have to go into, or that are impacting these road designs. There's tons of people that are doing the construction, utility work, and the surveying that aren't on the engineering side, that have huge roles and incredibly necessary roles for completing these projects. So because it's so broad, you don't need to narrow yourself only into one opportunity. There's plenty of ways to get a seat at the table.
And one of the nice things about transportation and engineering in general is you can pick kind of the setting of your job. It ranges almost from 100% in the office to 100% outside on site, and everywhere in between. So you can see as you go along, if you decide that you're somebody that likes the fast-paced, different environment of being on site, you can certainly pursue that. And if you're somebody who likes the regular schedule of being inside, always having air conditioning in the summer and heat in the winter, then there's that option too.
Yeah, and to take that, just add some more input here. we all took the engineering path with a 4-year, college degree, but certainly there's a lot of careers in transportation where you do not need to go to college. So I think that it all depends on what you're looking to do. If you look at, we're talking more about the roadways, but if you think about mass transit, MTA, the airport, BWI, the Port Authority, I mean, all these different things are part of transportation, and there are people need to work at the docks, at the port, things like that. That's all part of the transportation industry. There's a lot of opportunities there. I would suggest as individuals, certainly if it's a 4-year degree you're looking at, or even a trade school, or starting right out of high school, look for internship opportunities. Always have a resume available, and be aware of opportunities where you can gain experience. I know as an employer, one of the biggest things we look for out of candidates is, what experience do you already have? That way, when we hire you, we're not teaching you everything. Trust me, you're still going to learn a ton on the job. I mean, I learned my whole profession when out of college. What I do now is nothing what I learned in college. So I completely had the similar path as the other guys, but I would encourage internships, whether it's paid or unpaid. Look for those opportunities and get some experience, understand the industry, see what options are out there.
Yeah, that's some great insight. And one thing that I would recommend to our students too is, part of the high school experience or CTE programming is finding out what you don't like, right? So, if you get into a course in like a nursing program and you find out you really don't like blood, it's better that you figure that out in high school as opposed to be 2 years in college and then figure out you really don't like those fields. So get to explore, put yourself out there and try new things and find out what you like and what you don't like. So we're just at about time. So in the chat, I did place a link for the exit ticket. However, I do want everyone to complete the exit ticket. However, I would like all the students to make sure you stay on this call because we will be ending the session with our student focus group around transportation and about some of the barriers and how city schools can assist young people in bridging the transportation gap. I see Barbara's back on, so I'll let Barbara have some words and then and set us up for the next part.
Thank you everyone so much. I hope everyone had a great time in your breakout sessions. I want to apologize again for those technical issues that we had. I know we got kicked off and had to restart, but that's part of being successful in our virtual world right now is being persistent and trying to navigate those. So I want to celebrate teachers and students who found a way to get back in and get reconnected. All right, so we're moving into our listening session. It'll be around 15 minutes. In the meantime, so there's a couple of things that are happening at once. On the one hand, Stan is going to be hosting this listening session. Feel free at this point. We're going to ask you some questions. I'm going to post some questions. We really want to hear from you, particularly if you're a working student or you're a student who aspires to be working. We really want to be a partner with you as we solve some problems that we often encounter when it deals with transportation. So we've got some great questions. We're going to put those up momentarily. The other thing that's going to happen is I'm going to post our exit survey, so you can be working on that exit survey. That exit survey does two things for us. One, it tells us that you were here, and that's important, right? Because we share that attendance with your school. So please complete that exit survey. I'll post it momentarily. And then the other thing that it does, it tells us how to be better, how to serve you better, how to get you more resources, because we're only here for you to support you in your work and moving towards work. So those are the two things that are happening. I'll post that in just a moment. And then we are going to go ahead and get started with our questions. Stan, I sent it to you. Do you want me to screen share or do you want to do that?
If you want to go ahead and screen share, that would be fine. Or hang on, let me see.
I sent it to your email, but it was in that first email that I sent to you.
Let's see, did that work? Can you see the questions on the screen now?
We can.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for that, Barb. And again, and Barb, if you could help to kind of moderate questions and comments within the chat, that'd be great.
Absolutely, and Albert, I think too, is going to assist us with that.
Yes. So again, and this is something where we really want to hear from you. So this won't be nearly as productive if everyone's just quiet and not talking or not commenting in the chat. So this is really your opportunity for your voice to be heard. And many times throughout throughout the years that I've been involved.
Morning.
So, throughout the years, we've seen or we've heard many times where students and employers have said transportation has been an issue. Last year we started to take steps in combating some of those issues by offering driver's ed to some students, and it's something that we want to think about moving forward. So, that being said, we have several questions on the screen that I want to go through and start to ask. So question number one is, have you ever lost employment or turned down employment due to transportation issues? So in the chat, if you could respond with a 1, yes, or a 0 for no. So again, the question is, have you ever lost employment or turned down employment due to lack of transportation or transportation issues?
So we're starting to see some students respond with either a 1 or a 0. I am seeing some 1s there, that transportation has been a barrier for students. Some 0s too, so maybe we're at about 50-50 for that. So half of the students have experienced that challenge and half have not.
And, if we want to, Barbara, if anyone wants to go ahead and share quickly some of the barriers they've seen. Could we make sure if everyone is please on mute, unless you're going to be commenting. So if there's something you wanted to contribute, if you could just, Barbara, what's the best way for them to identify if they would like to share?
Maybe in your comment, if you, in the comment section, if you're willing to share, just say, I'm happy to share, and then we can call on you. Okay, so you can just chat in the chat, say I'd like to share, and then we'll call on you. Miss Brown, I saw Jada Brown as a student. I don't know. I'm always happy to see student faces. I don't know, Miss Brown, if you wanted to share or not. If there's Miss Brown, would you like to share? Have you ever had issues getting to work or not been able to get a job because you didn't have a car or a way to get there?
No.
Not yet.
No.
Okay. All right. Is there any maybe seniors or juniors who,
Yes.
Jada, if you don't mind muting yourself, dear. And then if there are any juniors or seniors who are working and have had that challenge and would be willing to share, we'd invite you to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so my name is Byron Day. I'm a senior at Edmondson. So there are times where I had transportation issues to at least get jobs. Like I think I had like 4 interviews to be exact before I had actually got a job that had transportation issues that at least like a 19-20 minute car ride, but like a 2-hour bus ride or something like that. And I didn't have the money like to get on the buses or anything because it was too far away from where I was.
Thank you very much, Byron. We didn't even ask a question around interviews, right? We're thinking about you getting a job, but you're making an excellent point that you have to go on lots of interviews even before that. And when it's not a sure thing, right? You don't know that you're going to get the job. To invest that money or invest that time is a lot. Thank you.
And that actually leads nicely to our second question. Like, what are some of the barriers, right? So, what are the barriers? Is it a lack of driver's education being offered? Is it funding to pay for driver's ed? Is it a lack of a car to take a driver's ed test? I'd love to hear some students talk about some of the barriers associated with obtaining a driver's license, or barriers that maybe you have older brothers and sisters. You've heard them talk about. So again, if you'd like to share in the chat, go ahead and put a comment in there if you'd like to share.
We have a comment, getting to work on time due to the bus being unreliable. That's a great point. I'm just taking notes as we go. So,
Gotcha.
and if you want to toss up, if you've ever had trouble getting to work on time because of the bus, let's get a 1. If you have not had that issue, let's do a 0. So if you want to respond to that, yep. Okay, we've had somebody second that the bus being unreliable is one of your challenges. Are there any other challenges? Thank you so much for the student that shared about the bus. Other challenges to getting to work or barriers? Traffic. Thank you, Taya. Taya, would you be willing to come off of mute and share a little bit whether you've had challenges with transportation or whether you have a license? I know we talked a little bit. You were one of the, I want to shout out Taya. She was one of the first people to be in here this morning. And I know that you have a plan for yourself. And I would be curious, do you have a license? Do you have a car? Is that something you're working towards?
I don't have a car yet, but I am learning. I have my permit test. Well, my permit's license. So right now I don't have a car, but I am learning how to drive. Well, I do have a car, my grandma's old car, but I had to get a license first. Then she can turn the car over to me.
Wonderful. All right. And have you done much exploration around insurance and all of those costs? Have you ever had anybody help you kind of calculate those costs at all?
No.
Okay. Thank you for sharing.
So what about the idea of getting insurance, right? Has anyone had experience getting insurance, or do they even know how to get insurance for a car?
I'd like to say something.
Sure.
As a teacher of a lot of these kids that I've taught, and in my senior class, as I get with my seniors, we talk about things like your steps about getting licensed and being able to be independent, stuff like that. A lot of our students have the hardest time with driver's ed because it's only offered during certain times and they have to work and they can't get there, or they play a sport and it interferes. When I went to Emerson, driver's ed was offered at the school. And then a lot of schools in Baltimore City, driver's ed isn't offered there anymore, which was a really big help. Which, if driver's ed was offered in schools more, you would see more and more students with their licenses early or their permits earlier than it takes them now. Most kids now try to scramble to get a license so they can try to drive the prom senior year. But getting a license and your permit is a big part of moving forward in everything that you're going to do in your future. And our kids sometimes need that bridge to help them get over that hump.
Mm-hmm. So luckily, just here in the past couple of weeks, we're very fortunate to have a partner. And I believe there'll be a formal announcement coming up, but a partner sort of really has stepped up in a big way to help with the offering of driver's education to a number of our students. So we're really excited about the partnership, and once an official press release goes out, we'll be really excited to share that with everyone. So they heard the need from us and from students and teachers. So we're really thankful for that.
I'd like to segue on the back of Mr. Ballantyne for a minute. I went to school at the Southeastern School District in Pennsylvania, Kennedale High School, just across the line in Baltimore County, Pennsylvania. Driver's ed was a graduation requirement, and we did have behind the wheel also as an elective. So you had a dedicated instructor teaching that full time, and that was offered in grades 11 and 12. Also, another note about people were talking about the transportation, the buses here. I've been on hundreds of transportation systems around the world, and been a part of focus groups. And it's every city, no matter what continent you're on, has their transport problems. But I gotta fairly say that Baltimore's got really the hind end of it. I mean, I remember when the first the metro was built, and I said, "Oh my God, this thing is not connecting to anything. It's not connecting to Penn Station. It's not going to BWI Airport or anything. It was like a subway to nowhere." And so, and I voiced my opinions and all that, and was part of the maglev conference at City Hall, and it's like, I don't know why we sometimes doing things that are completely doesn't make any sense when it comes to our transportation needs. And I worked in the rail industry for a while.
But thank you for that, Mr. Henniger. And moving on before we have any last comments or anything to share is, in general, like what role would you like to see city schools play in helping you towards a driver's license? Is it the offering of driver's ed? Is it just help in navigating insurance, or you're not sure of the insurance process? Or we even know, even as an adult, I know the car buying process can be tricky and can be scary at times. So you're securing loans and you're signing papers and interest rates. So really want to hear from students as far as what role you'd like to see city schools play in helping you bridge this gap.
We've got a comment from London, says definitely offering driver's ed. I will echo that. When I was in high school, I could take driver's ed at my high school.
And maybe piggybacking off of James's comment. So is there a time of day or time of year in which driver's ed would be most desired from the students? Morning, evenings, weekends, summers?
I think the best time, honestly, would be probably like right after school, where students don't have to travel far. We have a lot of students that are athletes, so the time of year really wouldn't play a part depending on what season the child has a sport in. But like for us, it was offered like right after school for a couple hours a day. And I think that would be the best opportunity, unless it was a way to make it an elective and they could go to it during their built-in schedule during the course of their day.
Thank you, Mr.
Gotcha.
Valentine.
Any other students or any of our guests want to contribute to the conversation around transportation and barriers and assistance?
Mr. Haneker points out that some other points of learning in driver's ed could be around the points that you get on your license when and how your insurance can go up if you aren't a safe driver too. So there's lots of education that could happen in those spaces. Thank you for that, Mr. Haneker.
Absolutely.
Any other students? Again, thank you, London, for suggesting driver's ed. Are there any other ways that you would want us to play a role in supporting you towards license, car, insurance, budgeting, saving?
I see another comment around how to get car insurance. So,
great. Yeah, I think that that's a valuable lesson, how to get the insurance,
Jade,
how to lower your insurance rates.
Yep. Jade, is your hand raised? If so, you can go to unmute.
Who's that game?
Sorry, yeah, go, Jada. Your hand was raised? Oh, okay. Watch out, a question.
I see a comment from Alessandra. I wish we had a lifestyle class that taught you driver's ed, insurance, how to buy your own car. It would be helpful because I'm expected to be an adult in a few years. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like a general adulting 101, but built around a car, because you can learn all of those different things. How to pay for your car monthly, which gets into budgeting, right? So really great ideas.
And even some of those things I even cover in driver's ed, like how to check the tread on your tires to make sure the tires are safe, how to check your oil, how to safely change a tire in case you have a flat tire. I think all those sort of things are very important that people need to know need to follow and need to know.
I want to say something, if I may. This is extremely important. One of the jobs that I had as an IT engineer, I had a company car. Okay, they gave you a car, and in order to do that, to go around and do my installations and repairs, you had to have a license, number one, and you had to have a good driving record, and they required the record of your driving, MVA, and if you had any points on that, that disqualified you for that position or being hired, because you had to have a company car, which is a really nice perk to have because you don't have to use your own car, and that was a perk. That's a lot. That happens a lot in the IT industry when you're, especially in your local field service.
Yep, absolutely. And we know we work with some contractors and employers that require license to get, they drive to a central location and then they have a company van or truck, box truck that has the tools on it, and they need their employees to be able to drive those vehicles to and from sites.
Well, thank you, everybody. We are at time. It's 1 o'clock, and we're really grateful for all of the time you shared with us today. If you have not done so yet, I have pasted the link to our exit survey, so please make sure you do that. It shouldn't take you very long, and that is both attendance and it gives us feedback on how to make these opportunities better for you. It also gives you a chance to say, here's what I'd like to see panels about or speakers about, so you can tell us those things, and we can design things that will meet your needs. I just want to say thank you again